But when I was preparing for today, I was thinking about the fact that it's Senior Sunday, and we're celebrating all these young people in the church who have reached the point where they're done with their adolescence and they're moving into this next phase we call adulthood. Whether or not they maybe feel like it, it's coming. And I was thinking, and I was like, 3 years ago, I was in this stage, and I was kind of trying to figure out what is going on. And it feels like it was so long ago, but it also feels like it was just yesterday. And you know, when we're young, people come up to us and they say, "So what do you want to be when you grow up?" And when we're little, it seems really easy. And when I was young, I was like, "Well, I'm going to be a vet, and I'm going to work on horses, and I'm going to have a ranch, and I'm going to have a bunch of horses, and you know, simple. There's nothing else. Why would you ask?" And as I got older, I still love horses. That's still something that's a big part of my life, but it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And then when you get to your later years in high school, especially that senior year, people expect you to have things figured out. And they start asking you these really difficult questions like, what college are you going to go to? What degree are you going to get? What are you going to do with the rest of your life? How are you going to get there from here? And I remember my senior year, I was like, what am I going to do? People were asking me these questions, and I was like, I don't know, you know, and I would say, well, you know, I'm going to kind of see what happens. I'm praying about it. That's a good, you know, solid answer, right? And someone's like, well, that's not a very good answer. I was like, yeah, it is. It's a valid answer. And so I got to graduation, and my plan at that point was to take a couple years off, work, save up money, buy a car, and try and figure out what am I going to do with my life. And it wasn't just a question of what am I going to do to make a living, but who am I going to become? When people look at me, how are they going to know me? Are they going to look and say, well, that's a person who made some good decisions. That's cool. Or are they going to look and go, well, you know, that didn't work out quite so well, did it? How are people going to know me? What's the point in what I do? And I think we all have that question in our life at least once, probably some of us a lot, where we get to these different phases in life and we go, well, what's next? What do I do now? Have y'all had that? I know I have, and still do. And I know I've talked to some adults in my life, and they're like, yeah, you know, that happens. And if it's graduation, maybe it's a job change, maybe something in your personal life didn't work out the way it's supposed to or the way you thought it was supposed to, and we've reached this stage where you've got to do something different, and you look and you go, man, this next move, how are people going to know me from what I do next? Maybe it's retirement. Maybe you're past retirement and you're still in that phase and you're going, what's next? When people look at me, what do they see? Well, in John chapter 13, what Pastor John just read, Jesus and the disciples are in the upper room, and they've just celebrated the Passover meal, and he has showed them what we now call Holy Communion. And he begins to talk to them. And throughout his ministry, at different times, he said this little thing like, well, I'm not going to be here forever. And you know, they had to hear that and think, you know, of course, we all die at some point. It's not like he's really going to be leaving us soon. And then all of a sudden, they're there in the upper room. His ministry is at its peak. It's like at the greatest. People have just celebrated his arrival into Jerusalem, and everyone's excited. And the disciples are like, yeah, you know, we've got this. And Jesus says, I'm going to be with you only a little while longer. I'm leaving, and you can't come with me. Well, that's kind of weird. Why would he say that? Why would he be leaving now of all times? And then he follows that up by saying, so now I am giving you a new commandment. Love each other. Just as I have loved you, you should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. He says, that's how you're to be known. Not as the disciples who followed Jesus, but as those who truly love him and love each other to prove that they are his disciples. And when you hear him say, love each other as I have loved you, you kind of think, okay, he healed the sick, he did these great things, but only a couple days later, he proved just how far he was really willing to go to show his love for us. A couple days later, or actually later that night, he would be arrested, betrayed by a best friend. He would be tried in a kangaroo court and executed on a cross in our place. He died to take on the punishment that we should have had. And the story doesn't just end there. That would be a lot right there if that's how it ended. Like, man, this guy took our place. But it doesn't end there, because a few days later, he's actually risen from the dead. So he doesn't just take our place, but he completely defeats death and sin. And he says, that is how far I'm really willing to go to show my love to you, to show it to others. And you have to imagine the disciples as Jesus comes back to them 3 days later. He appears to the disciples, and then throughout, I think it's like the next 40 some odd days, he appears to the disciples over and over again, and he continues to teach them and tell them, look, show my love to the people in the world. Teach people about what I have done. Teach people about the Father. Let them know who you are by your love. He says, forget about everything that the world tells you is important and follow after this. Follow after my love. All that's nothing. This is what's really important. This is what you really need to do. And he says that to us too, today. And it sounds nice. You know, it's like, okay, yeah, be able to say, well, forget all that. You know, this is what's really important. This is what I'm really going to focus on. But a lot of times, we get to points in our life, we're like, yeah, that sounds great, but I need food. I need to be able to survive. I really need that next job promotion to be able to get that raise so that I can get that car. That's what I really need. I don't need to forget all that to go and love these people. Don't you see? Sometimes life is a mess, and we go, no, I don't have time to go deal with these people and to show the love in the way that God really wants me, because this is what I have to deal with. How can I justify dropping everything in my life to say, I love these people? Because sometimes it feels like we have to let go of everything to be able to do that. How can we justify letting it go? It doesn't make sense. I was thinking about that as I was kind of getting ready for today a couple weeks ago. And I was like, how can you get up there and tell people to go and love others at all costs when it just doesn't make sense? And my devotion for that morning was out of John chapter 17. And at this point, Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he knows what's coming. He is fully aware now that he is going to have to be betrayed and arrested and crucified, and he's going to suffer. It's not going to end well. And in the other three Gospels, it says that Jesus is agonizing in prayer in the garden. He is completely distraught. He knows what's coming, and he's terrified. He's terrified. And when I was reading out of this chapter 17 in John, there's 26 verses. The first 4, Jesus is sitting there and he's praying that God would give him strength. He's praying that the Father would glorify himself through what was coming for him. And the rest of that chapter, he's not praying for himself. He's praying for the disciples. His prayer changes from God, this is what's coming for me, to God, give them strength. Give them love. Give them unity within the faith. And he doesn't just stop with praying for the disciples. He then begins to pray for the future believers. And that's me, and that's all of you. Jesus, the Savior of the world, God made flesh, is agonizing in prayer, preparing to die for something that we deserve, preparing to take on our punishment. And he's not praying for himself. He's not just focused on, God, what about me? This is what I have to deal with. He's praying for us, that we might be able to show his love to the world. Verses 25 and 26, he says, "O righteous Father, the world doesn't know you, but I do. And these disciples know you sent me. I have revealed you to them, and I will continue to do so. Then your love for me will be in them. I will be in them." That's the promise that we have. That even when life is falling apart and it doesn't make sense, Jesus has said he is with us. He showed us what it means to really, really love people. And he's telling us it's okay. You can drop this stuff that seems so important to really love these people. For like the first 2 years after I graduated, a year or two, I spent a lot of time going, what am I doing? and I kept hearing people talking about, if you don't go to college right out of high school, statistics say that you're most likely not going to go back to college, and you're not going to get a degree, and you're not going to get a good job. And, if you really want to succeed in life, you need to get on the ball and get focused and figure out what you're doing. Time's ticking. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I kept thinking about anything I could possibly do. I was like, oh, well, I could do, this. And I began to kind of look into going one way, and I was like, that's not going to work. And I was like, well, I could do this. No, that's not going to work. I'd be miserable. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? What are people going to think? And then I finally got to the point where I could say, okay, God, what do you really want me to do? Who do you really want me to be? And I had put off the idea of ministry for a long time. I was like, there is no way. No. God doesn't really want me to love people that way. I'm sure I could do it with something else. It's like God can work through you in a business. No, I don't have to be a preacher. Finally got to a point where I had to say, okay, what do you want me to do? I'll do it if you really want me to do it. If you really want me to step out in faith, I'll go this way. I'll love your people the way you're asking me to, even though it doesn't make sense and it's kind of scary. But that's what God asks us to do. He says, trust me, love my people, and prove to the world who you are by your love for others. And see, for us today, that goes for everyone. It's not just for someone who says they want to go maybe into ministry, or someone who says they want to be a missionary. No, you don't get out that easy. It's for everyone. And every part of your life, and anything that you do, you can choose to say, I'm going to follow my career, or you can choose to say, yeah, I'm going to do this, but most important is loving your people. Because see, as Christians, we know something that a lot of people have yet to hear. We know the good news that we don't have to continue to struggle through, because even when it doesn't work out on paper, and there's no way it would work out on paper, God's got a plan for us, and it's a good plan. It's a perfect plan. No matter what we do, he says, hey, just let it go and follow me, and it's a good, perfect plan. And it's about so much more than here in this world, in this life. That's what we know. We've heard stories about this place that we're going to, a place where there's no more sorrow, where there's no more disappointment, there's no more hurt. We're going to a place where everything is made brand spanking new. perfect. That's what it's really all about. That's how we're really supposed to live our life. That's how we are to be known. By people who've heard the good news and choose to share it with others. So the challenge for us is to go out and to live our life like we actually believe it. To go out and to prove to the world that we are disciples of Christ, not by just what we say, not by our really cool t-shirt with the little Christian whatever, not by the sticker on our car, but by the love that we have for others, proving to the world that we are his disciples. Amen.